Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from deep inside the heart of the future Liberty State. Sponsored once again by On Fire Ministries in the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news, where it's not about right or left, it's about right and wrong. It's about our hope not being in man, but in Jesus Christ. About not ending in prayer, but moving to action. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Father, deliver us from the evil one.
Welcome to Patriot Radio.
Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio. Today, the United States and China inch closer to war, and is the everything bubble bursting? Also, our guest today, Scott Wheeler, is here to talk about the FBI and counterterrorism here in the United States, and not only what we should be doing, but what's likely to happen here in the next 90 days. Here at Patriot Radio, we bring you all the news that you need before everyone else so you can be prepared, along with your family, for the times that are ahead and the times that are already upon us. No fear, we were made for this. So follow us on Telegram, patriotradio.us/Telegram, for real-time intelligence analysis and breaking news. Also, during this time of very huge uncertainty in the world, take a moment and at least pray with somebody. And you can send us a prayer request here at the QR code. And if you're listening, patriotradio.us/prayer. Send us a prayer request. We'd love to pray with you through this time, and be strategic in our prayers too. So maybe you just have it on your heart to pray with somebody else. Well, we're that somebody else. Today, your wisdom from the Word comes to us from Matthew chapter 7, verse 16. And I want to unpack this just a little bit. You will know them by their fruits. Grapes are not gathered from thorn bushes, nor figs from thistles, are they? So every good tree bears good fruit, but the bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, neither can a bad tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So then you will know them by their fruits. Now, a lot of people will just focus on grapes, which is the fruit of the individual. And if we're tied into the vine, if we're connected to the vine, Jesus Christ, we will produce fruit. But there's something else deeper here, and that is the fig. The fig is the fruit of a nation. And we are not just expected to produce fruit as individuals, we are expected to produce fruit as a country. Part of producing fruit as a country is, well, getting out the corruption. And the context of this verse is ravenous wolves or false prophets. False prophets will lie to you. False prophets of communism, false prophets of, well, Islam, the false prophets of pagan religions as well. They are going to deceive you. And you will know them by their fruits. You will know them that they don't produce fruit according to the kingdom. So what are we talking about with fruit? Well, Matthew 25 goes into this idea of fruits of a nation. Among those things are, well, healing the sick, helping the poor. But that's a spiritual context. It's actually translated all of those different things, freeing the captives. It's talking about a spiritual component that bears fruit, casting out demons, healing the sick, baptizing people in water, baptizing people in the Holy Spirit, preaching the gospel of the kingdom to them, walking with them in community. And as a country, are we getting back to our roots and getting back to the fruit by cutting out the corruption and focusing on what made America great, namely Christianity and Jesus Christ? It's interesting that our enemies understand this. The Chinese, the atheist communist Chinese, came to the conclusion that it wasn't our economy or our politics or our technology, but it was our religion, Christianity, that made the West great. Have we come to that realization, and are we going to bear fruit as a nation? Are we going to lead with our businesses and our missionaries instead of with the barrel of a gun? President Trump understands this, and that's why there is a dramatic shifting that's happening. And it's also why he's been in the face of globalists recently, because ultimately, a nation can't bear fruit if it's got corruption in its roots. So as he cuts these things out, yes, it might be painful for some. But why did it take so long for us to do something about it as we, the people, the government of the United States of America? Why did we let it get this way? Well, instead of blaming everybody, why don't we move forward and at least just clean it out now that we've recognized it? And that same rot, well, it's in the church. And just before this, in Matthew chapter 7, verse 5, it talks about taking the log out of our own eye before we take the speck out of our own eye before we take the log out of someone else's eye. This speck, or sometimes a log in our own eye, let's humble ourselves before the Lord, have him cleanse us, and he will cleanse the church. But let us not back down from accountability. Let us not back down from confronting real sin, not contrived sin or drama, but real sin. Contrived sin being made up things that are really your opinion. Drama being you're just trying to create controversy and strife and contention, which actually the scripture says is sin. But confronting real sin in the church, real compromise that needs to be set right. If we do that, we will bear fruit not only as a church, but we will bear fruit as a nation. And I think we can all agree on that. And that brings us now to your daily intelligence briefing coming to us from the globalist front.
The future is built by us. We have the means to make progress on the global agenda.
So it's interesting that Elon Musk has named a project Colossus after a 1970 science fiction film about the Forbin Project, which is where the U.S. builds a supercomputer that suddenly takes the world hostage, threatening nuclear annihilation. A little bit ironic, but he just purchased another 100 acres for this huge project, and he wants to create 3 million state-of-the-art AI processors there. December 31st, 2025, 1 million CPUs up and running. By 2026, 2 million, and by 2027, 3 million. The amount of energy that's going to take is going to require us to go back to nuclear power. And that is why small modular nuclear reactors and micro nuclear reactors are gaining steam. No pun intended. But this shows us that really what we're seeing is an AI revolution in the United States. And is this going to be led by technocrats, or is this going to be led by Christians? If you need a prayer point, pray that Elon Musk gives his life to Jesus. Also on the globalist front, the everything bubble is bursting while stock market and precious metals have America's making moves. It does look like there is a massive shift in realignment. Yes, there has been downturns in the stock market. Yes, there are traders now that are saying we have no clue what to do. But it's interesting that gold and silver are trending higher, and that Americans are going to things that are stable. That is a clear check against the globalist, which is why President Trump said clearly the globalist Wall Street Journal has no idea what they are doing or saying. They are owned by the polluted thinking of the European Union, which was formed for the primary purpose of, well, messing with the United States. I'll use a different term. And the Wall Street Journal's thinking is antiquated and very bad for the United States. Tariff-related money is pouring into the United States. Egg prices are down, oil is down, interest rates are down. Yes, that is exactly correct. All of those are going down. And it is why the globalists, I believe, are trying to shake up the economy. And there is very likely going to be more in the near term of that happening. President Trump also said the U.S. doesn't have free trade. We have stupid trade. The entire world is ripping us off. That's correct. What is happening now is a realignment and a balancing. That brings us to the China front. Some startling video has surfaced of Chinese barges tailor-made for allowing easy ship-to-shore transfer of supplies to a location without proper docking facilities. The barges were first noticed in a Chinese port a number of months ago and are commonly compared to the mulberry harbors that were following operations during D-Day in World War II. The barges' applications are obvious, and it does appear the Chinese are preparing for an invasion of Taiwan in the near term. What's interesting to me about the timing here is that the window, at least for tides, to do such an invasion is the March, April, May timeframe. Could this be a final run? I don't know, and they could be preparing for the fall. We're going to keep our eyes on this to see. This is one of the key indicators of invasion if a large amount of these barges begin to mass off the coast of China in the direction of Taiwan. Also, the United States hopes that robo-ships can outwit China's superior naval numbers. How about we just start shipbuilding again, like President Trump has said? The USX-1 Defiant, designed to counter China's shipbuilding edge, but history shows that fleet size always wins over tech edge. This unmanned surface vehicle promises cost-effective, high-endurance fleet expansion while raising critical questions on survivability, cyber vulnerabilities, and whether sea drones will be enough to counter. I completely agree. This drone is 180 feet long and 240 tons. But the bottom line is over-reliance on technology has always led to defeat in the past. Yes, I said always. And you have to analyze it objectively. Does technology help win battles? Yeah, sure. But then when it's figured out and countered, you'll have a stalemate like in Ukraine, or like in Ukraine, you'll go back to just the simple basics. So for the United States of America, instead of relying on technology, how about we build more ships? The Taiwan Air Force was penetrated by Chinese intelligence. 2 Taiwan Air Force officers have admitted to providing secrets on missile operations to China. They were indicted at the end of last year on suspicion of selling classified information to China, and the case centers on a former Air Force pilot who was recruited by Chinese operatives after retiring, and an active duty controller. So it does look like the Chinese are trying to do gray zone warfare. And I want to just stop with the gray zone warfare. There's no such thing. It's warfare. It just might not be called that because it would be too offensive to our sensibilities and may shock us into action. But it is warfare. Also on that same Chinese intelligence front, Chinese telecoms giant Huawei is said to have benefited from alleged bribery involving the EU Parliament, Belgian prosecutors said Thursday, after carrying out raids in Belgium and Portugal as part of a corruption probe. Yeah, that happened in Europe. Coming Friday, so tomorrow, groundbreaking legislation to ban China's access to our student visa program. 300,000 Chinese nationals have unfettered access, and we know that they're using those student visas for intelligence operations as a matter of fact. So it's about time we crack down. We'll see what happens here on Friday. Also, Australia is acquiring long-range anti-ship missiles and moving quickly to acquire these and deploy them in its coastal areas in the near term after Chinese military ships appeared near its coast conducting unannounced live-fire exercises, according to several government officials. Australia's Director General of National Intelligence, Andrew Shearer, told lawmakers in late February that China's recent actions were designed as to be provocative near these Australian waters, and 2 types of anti-ship missiles are under considerations, both of which can be fired from mobile launchers. And this is absolutely the right approach. Man-portable and vehicle-mounted launchers are exactly what is needed to counter the Chinese threat. Not only anti-ship, anti-air, and anti-tank. And the reason is because it is much harder to pin down. You can shoot and scoot, shoot and move when you need to. So this is exactly what the United States should be doing in the Pacific with our allies in Japan, the Philippines, and South Korea. Hint, hint. That brings us to the Middle East front. Immediately following a strike, the Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz issued a statement threatening the president of Syria, with him stating, wherever terrorist activity against Israel's organized extremist Islamic leader will find the Air Force aircraft flying above and striking terror targets. The IDF confirmed a strike in Damascus, Syria today, claiming they targeted a site with command and control hub of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad terror group. Israeli decision makers, including the defense minister, have vowed to continue such strikes should the transitional government allow these groups to proliferate under its nose. So nothing calming down really in Syria, especially between them and Israel. Also, a young Christian man whose video was posted yesterday with Islamist gangs, let's call them jihadi gangs, that's what they are, was forced to convert to Islam, but he refused. His body was found yesterday in the predominantly Christian village of Mizra'a in the Homs countryside, slaughtered with a machete. I want you to take a long, hard look at that face right there. That is what is happening to Christians in the Middle East right now. That is what is happening when the jihadis take over a government like the government of Syria. President Recep Erdogan, after speaking with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk in Ankara, Turkey and Poland are two NATO allies, commanding the alliance's largest land forces in Europe and positioned on its eastern and southern flanks. That is a direct statement, and supposed to be a threat, that Turkey is one of the largest armies in the world. Interesting that Poland now, with the Ottomans, that's very, very interesting. Also, President Trump renewed sanctions on Iran and extended a national emergency. This was originally signed by Bill Clinton in 1995. The order prohibits U.S. investment in Iran's oil industry, aiming to curb Iran's support for terrorism and weapons programs. Also, President Trump is to reinstate his ban on immigrant travelers to the United States from high-risk Muslim nations, including Somalia, Iran, Libya, Syria, Sudan, Pakistan, Yemen, and Afghanistan. Yeah, it's about time. Why did we let them in unvetted in the first place? Great question. When we come back from the break, more from the Russia front and also the United States. Are we really ready for counterterrorism? With our guest Scott Wheeler coming up here in about 15 minutes.
Attention business owners and entrepreneurs, Patriot TV is launching a brand new TV series showcasing American-made products, and your business could be featured. Whether you sell your products online on Etsy or Shopify and dream of reaching millions of viewers on smart TVs like Samsung, Sony, TCL, and LG, or apps like Roku, Android, and Apple TV, this is your chance. We're searching for U.S.-based businesses offering all types of products and services proudly made in the USA. If you've ever wanted to showcase your products on TV like QVC or the Home Shopping Network, now's your opportunity. Support our American economy, grow your business, and be seen by loyal Patriot viewers across the country. Know someone with a business or have a business yourself? Don't miss out. Contact us at supportingpatriots.com today. Be a guest on this new exciting TV series. Let's put your American-made products in the spotlight.
The new Supporting Patriots show on Patriot TV spotlights great Patriot-owned companies and introduces them to Patriot consumers, encouraging them to buy American-made. If you're an America-loving patriot that owns and operates his or her own business, and you have Made in America products or services, you're the perfect candidate to be interviewed on the Supporting Patriots show. If you'd like to be considered for an interview, email us at supportingpatriots@patriot.tv.
And we're back with the Russia front. Armenia announced it has fully agreed on the text of a peace agreement with Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan confirmed the process is concluded. This is after the war in 1992 to 1994 has seen several clashes since then, most notably last year. So it looks like there is peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia, at least in the near term. Poland has asked the Americans for nuclear weapons. Poland's president has asked the United States to transfer nuclear weapons to its territory per a Financial Times report released today. He told the Financial Times he had already discussed the proposal with the U.S. Special Envoy for Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg. Quote, the borders of NATO moved east in 1999, so 26 years later, there should also be the benefit and shift of NATO infrastructure east. For me, this is obvious, he said, end quote. The proposal is a direct result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, he added. And again, Europe continues to arm. Breaking news, Putin will meet with Witkoff tonight, so this is Thursday night. We'll see if Russia actually has some forward movement, but statements from a top foreign policy aide to Russian President Vladimir Putin say that the ceasefire proposed by the U.S. and Ukraine has no advantages for Russia. Quote, I stated our position that this is nothing other than a temporary respite for the Ukrainian military, nothing more, end quote. And then he continued, quote, it gives us nothing. It only gives the Ukrainians an opportunity to regroup, gain strength, and to continue the same thing, end quote. So again, we're going to see what happens with this tonight. But President Trump has indicated in the past few days that he does have the ability to put some pressure on Russia to at least bring a 30-day ceasefire to fruition. Meanwhile, Ukraine launched another large drone swarm attack against Russia, hitting targets in several regions in Russia, again aimed at Russian infrastructure. Also, South Korean officials confirmed they will sign a deal with Poland next month for another 180 K2 tanks. Poland has bought 180 K2s in 2022 and has set 1,000 K2s as its target. That means that Poland will likely send any modernized T-72 tanks to Ukraine. Also, German defense giant Rheinmetall says it could take over idle Volkswagen plants and use them to produce tanks. When was the last time that happened? Oh, that's right, during World War II. That brings us now to the South American front. Trump administration directed U.S. Southern Command to explore military strategies for the Panama Canal, considering both a forceful takeover and collaboration with Panama's military with the goal of strengthening U.S. presence and curbing China influence. Well, if you remember, we actually invaded Panama. It only took 3 days. And it was in modern history that we did that. So I'm sure there are plenty of these contingency plans on the shelf right now. But clearly this was not meant to tip off the Panamanians, but instead bring them to the table for cooperation. That brings us to the national front. Columbia University has expelled or suspended some students who took over a campus building during pro-Palestinian protests. What a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of these students are foreign students at Columbia University. So I guess a nod to take some pressure off. Doge shows some more examples of, savings at NIH. $100,000 for Vanderbilt University to study social networks among sexual and gender minorities. $37,000 to study the fear of deportation in Latinx young adults. $681,000 to study social media anti-vaping messages among sexual and gender minorities. And then the University of Colorado to study the effects of hormones on headaches in trans-masculine adolescents. Yeah, more savings. Now, why are they doing all of this? Well, because it's leading to eventually a deregulation campaign, which is just starting. Lee Zeldin just posted a video detailing the largest deregulatory announcement in U.S. history. The Environmental Protection Agency is initiating 31 historic actions to fulfill President Trump's promise to unleash American energy, revitalize our auto industry, restore the rule of law, and give power back to the states. The EPA will be reconsidering many suffocating rules that restrict nearly every sector of our economy and cost Americans trillions of dollars. Wow. That is a breath of fresh air. And not to be outdone, the FCC has just launched a sweeping deregulation initiative titled in reference to delete. This will free up speech, among other things. But importantly, when we have less regulation, the American entrepreneurial spirit is unleashed. So ultimately, where is President Trump headed with this? I'm going to get to that in a second. But President Trump also signed an executive order cracking down on radical activist judges and far-left groups abusing courts, demanding to pay court costs to stop frivolous injunctions costing taxpayers millions. Essentially, this is requiring them to put up a bond when they bring these injunctions. Yeah, that should be a standard practice of law to do that. And so he is saying anytime the United States has these suits coming forward against it, that it will be required for the lawyers to do that. Amazing that they haven't been doing it all the way across the board already. But this is why President Trump is doing all of these things. Ultimately, the Trump administration is pushing to eliminate taxes for individuals earning less than $150,000 per year, according to Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick. This would be doing away with the income tax. Now, if you don't know what this means to you, you're talking $20,000 extra dollars a year. In other words, a car. This would be a huge stimulus to be able to do this. And part of when you raise tariffs, you need to offset that raising of tariffs with a lowering of personal taxes. Now, remember, we've been talking about the fact that the Marxists and the jihadis would begin to target leaders, patriot leaders, Christians, and property for destruction. We've started to see this happen with the Tesla dealerships being attacked, a CEO over in Portland being attacked at his home. Now General Flynn confirms credible threats to Alex Jones, InfoWars staff, Elon Musk, and President Trump and his family. And interestingly enough, these threats come on the heels of a horrendous tragedy where one InfoWars reporter was brutally murdered outside his home earlier in the week. So this is not hyperbole. Keep your head on a swivel. If you're a patriot, Christian, a leader, these people are being backed into a corner. Their money is being taken away. Their networks are being disrupted. And many of them are looking at jail time and prosecution. So for some of them, they think that they don't have anything to lose, which is why I believe Trump will be invoking the Alien Enemies Act in coming days, according to CNN. This has been brought up before because I believe the disruption of these networks en masse is about to happen here in the United States. Also, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, finally calls it out and says that the number one threat to the U.S. is not white supremacy, but radical Islam. Finally, reality coming back to our national intelligence apparatus. Which brings up the Biden administration. Apparently, they were cooking the books on immigration. Can you believe it? Oh my goodness, what a shock. The Biden administration has once again deceived Americans by counting illegal aliens who were caught and released as ICE arrests. And that's how they did it, folks. Now, real stats. Breaking news. ICE has reportedly arrested 32,809 illegal aliens from January 20th to March 10th. Compare that to 33,300 arrests for all of fiscal year 24 under the Biden administration. Great job, but they need to pick up the pace before the midterm elections. Also, according to the Oversight Project, a second auto pen appears to have been found. Who was signing all of these executive orders and pardons and commutations? Well, that's a great question. And if it wasn't Joe Biden, or if he was so cognitively impaired he couldn't have possibly understood what he was doing, then that would give grounds to challenge every single one of those pardons, commutations, and executive orders. And I think that needs to happen. Now, a little bit closer to home here in Spokane, I saw this come out, and this is, well, it's very instructive. Maybe in your hometown, in your state, you have a paper like The Inlander, colloquially known as the Inslander here in this area. But this week, they're advertising for the Communist Party, and they're not even hiding it. Join the Communist Party USA. Now, why would you support something that has been responsible for the deaths of tens of millions of people and claim some sort of moral high ground? Well, that would be anybody's guess, I guess. But I think that listeners and people watching should really challenge this in their state, in their city. That communism is not okay, and it never has been. And there is something morally superior to communism, and that is Christianity, which has brought the most peace. Yes, that is correct. And Christian missionaries have brought the most help around the world, and the United States has been at the forefront of all of that. Also, a volcano in Alaska will likely erupt in the coming weeks and months, scientists say. Mount Rainier, Yellowstone, and Mount Spur are constantly being monitored here in the United States as active volcanoes. Volcanologists are closely monitoring Mount Spur in Alaska as a series of small, shallow volcanic earthquakes continue beneath the volcano, indicating ongoing activity. An overflight video from February 7th shows a small lake nestled in the snowy center. So we're going to be monitoring that over the next few weeks. And that's the briefing. Remember, the antidote to dependency and socialism is to be a God-fearing, self-reliant, freedom-loving American. And once again, if you need prayer, you can click on the QR code or go to patriotradio.us/prayer. When we come back from the break, our guest today, Scott Wheeler.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
What do a neurosurgeon, a country artist, and a television and radio host have in common? They all saw the writing on the wall. Big banks sharing your financial information with big government. Join them as owners in Old Glory Bank, the pro-America online bank that protects your privacy, security, and liberty. Invest today at own.oldglorybank.com.
And we're back with our guest, Scott Wheeler. He's an investigative reporter for One America News Network, OANN.com. Scott, it's great to have you back on Patriot Radio. Got a lot to talk about today.
Hey, good to be with you again, Matt. I would correct one thing. I haven't been with One America News Network in several years.
Okay. Well,
sorry for that confusion.
Oh, no problem at all. So I do want to talk about where we left off last time, and that is why the Democrats were so afraid of Kash Patel in the FBI. We have a lot of leftists and jihadi networks in the United States that appear to be regrouping and preparing for something here in the near term. Why are the Democrats not with us on disrupting terror networks, real terror networks, in the United States?
Well, they have to oppose anything that Trump is for. to start with. That's their default position on everything. And in the past, it's worked, but that was when those information operations were working in tandem with other attacks on Trump that were suggesting he was a traitor and colluding with Putin and things like that. So now that people have kind of turned the corner from that and see that the Democrats aren't credible with those attacks, they're kind of left alone. In fact, I was just reading a senator's tweet, a Democrat senator from Oregon's tweet about the heroic government employee that got laid off that he's standing up for. And it reminds me that that's really not a good posture for them, because most people, even Democrats, don't, federal jobs are coveted among the people. They pay very well. They pay better than almost any taxpayer makes, the average taxpayer. They're in the top 10% of wage earners. That's not going to play well with them, defending their do nothing 9-to-5 jobs when they show up. So I think that's going to be a little bit trickier this time for them.
I do too. We have these groups that do appear like they're gaining a little bit of traction right now, or at least trying to break out. Unity Front and some of these other organizations trying to break out. And, they always seem to be shooting for May Day. What can we expect here in the next 90 days? And are they really going to get enough traction? And is Kash Patel doing enough to try to disrupt them? And what should he be doing? I know that's a lot of questions, but there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he has a tough job because there's been a great deal of neglect for the past 20 years, the FBI, and especially the past 15, 16 years, going Obama to Biden. The FBI was neglecting its real obligations, you might say. For 4 years, Antifa, posing as a group called Jane's Revenge, was firebombing pro-life clinics around the country, medical clinics around the country, over 240 of them, in fact, and there has been very few arrests, less than a dozen arrests so far. So one of the things that he's got to do is go back and start working on those crimes. The new groups coming in, it's almost always Antifa. They go by anarchists, they go by Jane's Revenge, they go by all sorts of different fronts, and they're in all of them. And in ones that they didn't start, they infiltrate and try to get those groups violent, to make them violent, to make it appear that there's this, large scale movement to overturn the government. Mm-hmm. The very thing that the Democrats accused Republicans of doing. And so it's kind of interesting that they've let this go for all these years when, Biden was out saying that the real threat to the country was white nationalists. Antifa, a communist organization, was out setting things on fire. It's really outrageous. In fact, there are several other groups that you could point to. There's John Brown Gun Club.
Yep.
There's the Socialist Gun Club. These are armed and dangerous, and as far as we can tell, their numbers are in the tens of thousands. There are black militant groups some are funded by the Russians, in fact, and they are dangerous. In fact, in Stone Mountain, Georgia, a few years ago, about 6 years ago, a group of them confronted what they were calling white protesters, and they were armed with high-tech weaponry.
I mean, that does bring up the natural question. The funding's being cut off. I mean, we're seeing what USAID was actually going to. The networks are being disrupted. Are they going to be pressed into a corner where they feel like they have nothing left to lose but to come out? We started to see protests even here in the Northwest at a scale we have not seen in about 5 years. Just recently. I mean, is that how you're analyzing this? And again, what can we expect here going into the summer?
Well, I've been monitoring the traffic of those groups, and they are planning a kind of explosive attacks. In other words, large numbers showing up in certain places all at once. And when that happens, that's usually the cover for Antifa to commit violence. And so even though you might have 50,000 people out, 5,000 of them are violent, but the whole crowd looks violent, and it looks more threatening and intimidating. And it's hard to sort out with crowds that large. It's hard to sort out who were just showing up because there was a protest and who was actually showing up to commit violence. And so that's going to be part of it, trying to figure that out. And we have been on top of it I've been investigating Antifa for 7 or 8 years now. So we have a good handle on it, but I don't think the government does.
I don't think so either. And I mean, that brings us up to the counterintelligence status here in the United States. I've heard from multiple people that it's just completely broken. So what's the advice to Kash Patel? How do we restart a truly viable counterintelligence apparatus here in the United States?
Well, it's not going to be easy because he has to sort out the political people, the people who rose to power under Democrat administrations and got senior level appointments, and sort them out from the people who are serious agents. And I think most of them, probably 75%, are good agents who are there because they want to fight crime. And they've got to hold on to them. They're going to be more motivated than ever because now they feel like they'll be able to do their jobs and that they'll have support from the administration. Whereas before there was a lot of uncertainty about what they should be investigating and what they shouldn't. In fact, one excellent example was during the Hillary Clinton investigation in 2015, and 2016, the FBI wanted to indict her on the Espionage Act with regards to her emails, keeping classified emails on her home server. And the FBI, including Lisa Page, the FBI attorney who was caught up in the scandal with Peter Strzok, she told Congress that they recommended and wanted to prosecute Hillary Clinton, but the Justice Department official who was in charge of national security, there's an Office of National Security at the Department of Justice, a man named Richard Scott, young man in his early 30s, made the decision not to prosecute. And he had been Hillary Clinton's, worked for Hillary Clinton's attorney's law firm just prior to going to the Justice Department. And he made rank very quickly. He was like 28 years old, went over there. By the time he's 32, he's head of the National Security Division of the Department of Justice. And he was the one, according to Lisa Page, to decline prosecution of Hillary Clinton under the Espionage Act. So they've been working a long time to get people in the right place so that they can pull these levers when they need to. And that's really what happened. And then you put that together with a jurisdiction like Washington, D.C., where you have Democrat Party judges at the federal level, and very difficult to get a jury that's going to convict a Democrat.
That's exactly right. When we come back from the break, we're here with Scott Wheeler, investigative reporter, and has been tracking Antifa for a very long time. Would like to talk more about what is the influence of China and how do we combat it?
American business owners, you understand the power of TV. If you have a product that you want to sell to millions of like-minded Americans who value quality, hard work, and supporting the red, white, and blue, Supporting Patriots is the perfect place. If you're ready to bring your product to a patriotic audience eager to buy American, then contact us today at supportingpatriots.com and secure your spot on Supporting Patriots. Let's build a stronger economy. When we buy American, we support our future.
I couldn't give anything a higher endorsement.
I would be remiss had I not include Cardio Miracle on my very short list of secrets.
It's the real deal. It's a real product. It's not another supplement.
I'm operating about 6 to 8 hours, and I've noticed that being on this Cardio Miracle has made a huge difference.
Since I started taking Cardio Miracle, about 8 months into it, the benefits have been fantastic.
You know, if I get hungry, then I just have a Cardio Miracle.
Not only is it safe, but it's necessary to take Cardio Miracle to stay well.
This let me sleep. It's showing up more energy, more get up and go, and it's all because of what this company does.
For me as a doctor, Cardio Miracle is a staple.
Cardio Miracle to me is hope in a glass.
To try Cardio Miracle for yourself and get a special fan discount, go to the host page right now and click the link for Cardio Miracle.
And we're back with our guest, Scott Wheeler. We were talking about before the break just these different interplay with these organizations, that they've been actually working people into the federal government so that these organizations actually proliferate and are not prosecuted. What does it look like with the foreign influence? We talk about Russia with some of these organizations, but also China. How is China playing into this? You know, there has been some links with the John Brown Gun Club, specifically in the Pacific Northwest. What about the rest of the country?
Well, China for a long time has worked to infiltrate different agencies. In fact, a recently retired senior agent for the Defense Intelligence Agency had told me that he believed that there were a lot of Chinese spies working inside the Justice Department. And that should be very alarming. But we really haven't been paying much attention to this. And it's been going on for, well, I caught a Chinese spy here in 2002, I believe it was, named Han Bao-yu, had been working on a secret project in China using exotic materials that we use in stealth technology. And he was here studying at a university that had contracts to work for the government on the Defense Department on that very substance. And we had, just prior to that, a substance in the late 90s called terphenyl D. It's terbium, dysprosium, and iron smelted in a certain formula that makes it magnetorestrictive. In other words, it reacts powerfully to a magnetic field. It's unbelievable in the use of fighter wing technology. You can increase the envelope of a flying vehicle, whether it's a manned vehicle or unmanned. It would increase the envelope and the performance of that vehicle. They had a Chinese student at the Ames Ordnance Laboratory work. He was a student at Iowa State. They're nearby Iowa State. Somehow got close to this terphenyl, where terphenyl D is made, stole the formula and took it back to China. And in 2002, I believe, I obtained a photograph of him with, at the time, of the Chinese Premier Xi Jinping, touring the factory where they were making that very substance, terphenyl D. They called it, had it by a different name, but it was the same magnetorestrictive, very exotic material. So we know they're here. There's 300,000 Chinese students here. Not all of them are spies, but that is one shotgun approach, which is the way that China conducts intelligence. They don't have one or two James Bonds out there looking for certain things. They'll have 100 or 1,000 people nibbling around the edges, and they will get enough information to create this mosaic, which they will, intelligence mosaic, and they can put together the information they need that way. So it's the shotgun approach versus the laser beam approach in terms of espionage. And so having 300,000 students, what if it's only, even if it was only 1%, that'd be 3,000 potential spies on the ground here. Not all of them come here as spies. Some of them come here to be educated, but by the virtue of the fact that they were granted a visa or an exit visa from China, they owe the government something. Yep. And the government comes and approaches them, and oftentimes will convert a person by saying, "Look, you've got family back in the home country. What are you going to do for us? And do you want to come back home, or do you want to see your family again?" And they can exploit it. It's very similar to what the Soviet Union used to do. So it is a major problem. During the Clinton years, we had the Clinton administration had decontrolled strategic weapons technology to China so fast that the Department of Defense could not keep up with it, and they were trying to stop, and they were warning the White House at that time that what they were decontrolling was going to be turned into weapons. White House would tell them to shut up. stand down, and they would decontrol it anyway. And China was able to go from little more than a junkyard army in the early 90s to now a high-tech army that might compete with us, and according to some of our generals, maybe further along than us in some high-tech capabilities.
So what network should be targeted for? I mean, how should we go about this? Because it is vast right now, and it was intended to be that way, almost overwhelming. What network should we target first? Where should we look first? And what would you advise Kash Patel?
Well, what I would say is, at first sight, if you see Antifa showing up, I would make arrests. I would everywhere you can. They're going to show up, especially in districts like where you are, where you have a friendly prosecutor, a friendly state's attorney general. And they're going to do things like that, go to places like that because there's lower risk of prosecution. But anywhere they can, they need to put pressure. And if they can find that what they're doing connected to a conspiracy, national conspiracy, they can then prosecute them for a federal crime versus state crime or local crime. So they can do that, but they're going to need to infiltrate, and it's very difficult to infiltrate Antifa. They're going to need to infiltrate. They're going to need to develop sources, and that will reveal a lot of information. But their network is very sketchy. They have a lot of college professors that are working behind the scenes, college instructors, numerous ones that we've uncovered, and that is what's going to they're going to have to shut that network down and make it so costly for a university to hire a Antifa professor, for example. One that there's some that are out in the open, easy to identify. They should come down hard on those universities. And there is also, they need to monitor the foreign interference, because there is foreign money coming in to back Antifa to some level. We could never determine how much, but definitely some.
Well, that brings the question up too of the jihadi networks. I mean, where should Kash Patel start with those? Because the Muslim Brotherhood, in many senses, has tried to normalize itself, and people have bought it.
Yeah, it's true. They normalize itself in, for example, the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE. That was originally started by the Muslim Brotherhood. It was a forerunner of the CARE of the Hamas. It was meant to be the propaganda face of Hamas. CARE, you had the Holy Land Foundation and one other that were started by the Muslim Brotherhood for that purpose. And Holy Land Foundation got rounded up, but CARE, for some reason, was allowed to continue standing. And they're still, to this day, oftentimes during Democrat administrations, they will be advising the FBI on how to investigate terrorists. It's hilarious. You would think, of course, they're playing them, but I can tell you firsthand, I spoke to many people at the FBI, and they said, we wish that's the case. It's not. They're not playing them. They're being played.
That's just, and that, again, goes back to the reconstruction of some semblance of an operational counterintelligence apparatus in the United States. But Scott, any final thoughts? What should listeners and everybody watching really know? What can they do at their local level?
Well, pay close attention, of course, and try and make sure your representative knows where you stand on these issues. Watch for Antifa and where they are. Encourage law enforcement to crack down hard on them, and that's one of the ways. If they can get local arrests, then they can build a case for conspiracy, which will elevate it to a federal level. And we can see, now that we have an FBI that's on America's side for a change, we might see some real progress here.
I pray to God that that's the case. Scott Wheeler, thanks for joining me on Patriot Radio. It was great having you on. Great conversation. Be blessed and keep up the fight.
Thanks so much.
Scott Wheeler, investigative reporter, talking about Antifa, talking about the foreign influence, and also just briefly the jihadi networks. So what can you do at the local level? Well, one thing you can do at the local level is relational with your local prosecutors and county sheriffs. Do they even know of Antifa, the Socialist Rifle Association, John Brown Gun Club, Redneck Revolt, Extinction Rebellion, and just the connections from a Maoist insurgency model perspective with the political arms of these organizations. And they'll claim to be loosely connected, if connected at all. But what about organizations like Indivisible? Where are they getting their funding from? Act Blue, where are they getting their funding from? How are they playing into this? And it is incumbent upon local prosecutors to start picking up the ball on these issues and not just leaving it to the feds. Something you see may be actually the key to cracking a case open. So if you see Antifa protesting in your area, get pictures of them. Share that with your local law enforcement. Share it online, on Twitter. And don't think that you're not going to make a difference, because it might just be your picture that is the piece of a puzzle. I remember back in the legislature when the Students for a Democratic Society, an overtly communist organization, showed up at the Capitol. They unfurled their banner, and we hadn't seen that banner in years. And I actually got a picture of it for the very first time in years. We could prove that the SDS was still operational. So there is an opportunity coming here as well. And it's going to take all of us, not just one person, not just Kash Patel or President Trump. It's going to take all of us as Americans to preserve our liberty and pass it on to our posterity so that they can live in peace and freedom. And you and me, we're together in this. So let's be brave. And let's not presume that these folks are not as intentional as they are, because they are clearly intentional, and they have been infiltrating for a very long time. They almost got the United States of America, but they didn't. And so now it's our time to make sure that our country is not corrupt and survives for another 50 years or 250. This is Matt Shea. Thank you for joining me on Patriot Radio. May God bless all of you. He's making this generation the greatest one